This is part 2 for Unit 5 and should be a little bit quicker. Again, it's the second part and we're just having to think this time about Steve's balance sheet. We thought about his profit and loss account, and this time we're looking at his balance sheet. Rather than do the key terms in the same way as I did them in the last video, I'm going to show you just on a statement of financial position, also known as a balance sheet. I'm going to got the key terms next to it. So the first key term is your fixed assets. So find a nice definition of fixed assets off the internet, out of the textbook, and this time we're thinking about pages, where are we, still 77, 78 in the textbook, so make sure you have a read of them alongside this video. But fixed assets, what are they? These tend to be assets which a business isn't intending to sell within the next 12 months. In fact, they're assets that a business probably can't sell. So you're sat in our school maybe at the moment, and our school, one of their fixed assets is the building. The desks, the chairs, the computers, they all have a value. If we sold the fields around the school, they've got quite a big value. We could sell them for housing developments. We could sell, the school itself. It's quite an expensive building if somebody else wanted to buy it. But we couldn't really sell it because we stopped being a business. We stopped being a school. If we were to look at, let's think the Alcote Centre, and we think of the big Asda there in Pudsey, the fixed assets for that business, and again the building itself, the land that the building's on, all the trolleys that the business has got, the tills which are within the Asda, they're all fixed assets. The business doesn't want to sell them. It can't sell them, otherwise it stops becoming an Asda supermarket. So they're your fixed assets. The next thing is your current assets. These are the things that you could turn quite quickly into cash. Again, probably thinking within a sort of 12-month window. So the things that you expect to be able to turn into cash within the next 12 months. So if we have a look on our list here, it's got trade receivables or debtors. These are people who owe you money. So this example of a balance sheet says that this business is owed £2,000. You wouldn't expect someone to owe you that sort or owe a business for more than 12 months, and therefore it goes into the current asset and we count it as money. Although we've not got it, it's money we expect to get within the next 12 months, and so we count it as an asset, something that is the business can count on. Cash, obviously that is an asset, that is something that you own, so you can do whatever you want with that amount of money, and you don't need to turn it into cash. It already is cash. The other asset or current asset is inventory or stock. So again, thinking of that as the example, all the tins of beans, all the loaves of bread, all the fruit and veg, the business expects to be able to sell that within the next 12 months, and therefore that is the inventory and stock, and that's another current assets. So anything, whether it's the finished product for the business or whether it's something it's sort of working on, if it expects to be able to sell it within the next 12 months, that will be a current asset, and that's something that the business counts as a positive. So if we have a look here at this business so far, if we just look at the assets for that business, we've got 2,000, 3,500 and 3,000. So the total assets for this business are £8,500. So now let's look at the liabilities, stuff that the business will need to pay, money going out to the business within the next 12 months. So first one is creditors. Creditors are the opposite of debtors. They're people who've lent you money. So in the next 12 months, this business is going to expect to pay people who've lent it money £8,000, and that's, when we're thinking about people who've lent us money, that's probably our suppliers. So if we are a builder, so if we've been down to the local builders merchants and we've said we want a load of bricks, the chances are they've given us, if we're a business who's done business with them before, then they might give us 30 days to pay that bill. So we take the supplies that we need, they send us an invoice, and they'll maybe give us 30 days to pay. They're our creditors. So anything we expect to pay within the next 12 months would be current liabilities, and in this case we're saying £8,000 of that will be people, creditors, people who we owe money to. The other thing is an overdraft. An overdraft, in this case £2,200. An overdraft is money that you borrow from the bank. Some of you may have had an overdraft in the past. The difference between an overdraft and a loan is that you might say to the bank, right, okay, I would like an overdraft of £2,000, and they'll say okay. You don't need to use it. You could use some of it. You might never use it, but you can use anything between 0 and minus 2,000 as it were of your account, and that will be money that the bank will lend you, and that would be a £2,000 overdraft. With a loan, if you went to the bank and said I'd like a loan, then they would give you, for £2,000, they'd just give you the £2,000 straight away, and then it's a case of you having to pay them back. You couldn't turn around and say I'd like a loan for £2,000, and then when they go to give it, say, well, actually I only want £50 of it so far. That's not the way that a loan works. Equally, another big difference is that an overdraft written into every person's contract for their overdraft, whether it is an individual or a business, is likely to be that the bank can call it back whenever they want. Unlike a loan where you say I will borrow the money and I'll borrow it for 2 years, an overdraft is likely, and pretty much in every person's overdraft contract with their bank, it will be that if the bank wants to ask for that money back, they can at any time, and you have to be able to pay them. So banks can quite often give out really, really big overdrafts to businesses, but the moment that they feel that the business may not be able to pay that overdraft back is probably the moment that they will ask for it back, and that's why often businesses go into liquidation, because they don't have the money to pay back those current liabilities, that money that they owe straight away. Therefore, in this case, our business has got, if you look back at the assets, £8,500 was the assets, the money that they have got coming into the business in the next 12 months. But the liabilities, the money they've got going out of the business, the current liabilities are 8,000 plus 2,200, so 10,200 going out. So if you do the maths, 8,500 take away 10,200, you end up with the net current liabilities figure of minus 1,700. So over the next 12 months, this business example that we're looking at here will have more money going out than it will have coming in. Okay, so once we've got that net current liabilities figure, we take that away from our fixed assets figure. So the buildings and all the other computers, equipment, all the things which we're not going to sell. So we've got our net current liabilities of minus 1,700. So we've got 14,600 take away 1,700, and that gives us assets, total assets for the business of £12,900. And there's a box on the right hand side which shows how that's worked out. We then think, well, actually, okay, and this is the sort of balance side of the balance sheet. The assets of the business are £12,900. Well, if that's what the business is worth, if they're the assets of the business, what the business owns, how is that funded? Where did that money come from? And if we just have a little look further down, we can see that £6,000 of it came from the money that was put in by the partners, and 6,900 of it is just retained profit. So there was profit that was kept in the business, and you can see that the total assets and the total capital will always balance. So the assets of the business always balance with how the business is funded, and that's why it's called a balance sheet. If we have a look at the actual example that you're going to have to work on here, we can see fixed assets at the top for his building firm of 120,000. So you might want to comment on what fixed assets are. You might want to comment on, for a building firm, what could his fixed assets be? What do we think he owns £120,000 of, or his business owns £120,000 of? We've then got our current assets, the stock that he's got. So for the case of a builder, it's going to be things like the bricks and he's going to be things like the bricks and the materials that he'll need to build the things that he's going to build. The debtors, so the people who owe us money, £35,000. If we look to the current liabilities we owe over the next 12 months, we think we'll owe £56,000 to our suppliers. Our bank overdraft is £36,000, and so our net current assets are £43,000, £135,000 take away £92,000, and that gives us our net current assets. When it comes to comment on this, you may want to make some comment that our debtors figure is quite a lot below the creditors figure. So people owing us money is a lot lower than people we owe money to over the next few months, but that might be because of our high stock figure. I think a big thing to look for there is, does a business like a builder's really need to have £100,000 worth of stock? Don't know. Maybe I would have thought that you buy your stock just sort of as and when you need it. I would have thought that the stock for on a balance sheet for a builder should have been a little bit lower than that. The current assets at 43,000. in this case it's got a slightly different category in there. It's got less long-term liability. So this is the bit where we're saying, well, actually, of these assets that the business has got, it's got 43,000 current assets, 120,000 fixed assets, and therefore £163,000 worth of assets overall. So how is that funded? Where does that come from? And in this case, it's a long-term bank loan of 58,000, share capital, money put into the business originally by its owners, 40,000, and retained profits of £65,000. There isn't a huge amount to say about how the business is funded towards the end. We're more interested nearer the top end about how current assets and current liabilities, how are they affected. But again, if we look at that net current assets figure, it's positive. So over the next 12 months, that business is reasonably safe insofar as it should be able to pay all its liabilities, and still its assets are quite high. The big problem for that business is going to be if its stock, if it doesn't able to make something with that stock and turn it into something else so that it can get some money, then its assets, it may have some problems paying its creditors. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's think about assets, things owned by the business. It owns £100,000 worth of stock. I said a little bit earlier, that's quite high. Its debtors, people who owe it money, are 35,000, and it doesn't talk in this example about having any cash in the bank. So this business is relying on £100,000 worth of stock and people paying it money. Pardon me. And people paying it money in order to be able to pay its liabilities. In the next 12 months, its overdraft of £36,000 is going to need paying. They need to have cash or money in from other people to be able to pay that. Its creditors, people, our suppliers, people we owe money to, probably for that stock, are going to want that money. So this business over the next 12 months is going to need to pay people £92,000, but actually we're only expecting to get £35,000 from our debtors, and there's no indication of any cash in the current assets. We've got no money to pay. So if our bank overdraft is asked for immediately, there's no money there to pay it. If the creditors need the money before our debtors give us the money, there's no money to pay it. We've got £100,000 worth of stock, bricks, mortar, taps, whatever it might be. They need to be able to produce stuff with that. They need to get the jobs done and increase in that current assets figure. They need to get a cash line in there. They need to get money coming into the business to be able to pay some of these liabilities. Although that net current assets figure is really positive at 43,000, it would be a problem for this business if they are unable to convert the stock into money, cash, or if their debtors don't pay. But equally, if the creditors in the bank overdraft want their money before they can sell any of the stock or get some of the debtors' money in, then this business might have some serious problems trying to pay some of its debts. Okay, so that's probably the big analysis point for this piece of work.